Hey everyone, welcome back to Beyond Nihility. It's 2025 and I hope this year brings lots of love, luck, happiness and creativity into your life. In this video, we're gonna try to learn on how to create our own gold textured or gold foil brush in Procreate based on all the attributes that we have learned in the previous videos. If you follow all the steps that I'll be discussing today, you'll be able to create an actual gold textured brush which you can use it on any layers. So let's go ahead and create this beautifully textured brush. I already have the brush created, so I'm just gonna go through what settings I have set in order to get the desired result. There are three things that you have to take care before creating this particular brush. One is applying right blending modes, which we'll discuss later in this video. Second thing is using the texture that you want to create, how to tweak around it and make it look perfect. Third thing is combining two different brushes to get the desired result. With that being said, let's get into the process. So I'm just going to open the brush that I've already created. I've named it just gold foil brush. So I'm just going to click on it in order to get me to this particular interface. Now you must be wondering, why do I have the light interface turned on in Procreate? But trust me, this looks so much better in the camera, I hope. Now if you can see, there are two particular brushes that I've combined in order to create this particular gold foil brush. First, I'm going to clear the drawing pad and I will set it to this particular color, and I'll also increase the preview size. This is how my brush looks like as of now. First, let's go through the primary brush that I've created. Main thing that you have to take care is about the shape, grain, rendering and the blend mode, because these will definitely help you create a perfect brush. I'm gonna first discuss the grain, because grain is something that will give us this particular gold foil structure. So as we discussed in the previous video, we tried understanding how various properties under grain work like. If you haven't watched this video, I'll leave a card on the screen for you to go ahead and watch that one first, so you'll understand these concepts a little better. First thing is the grain source itself. Now this particular grain source that I've imported, so it was basically a gold foil image that I downloaded, and once I downloaded, I edited the image a little bit. I'll leave the link where you can go ahead and get the exact same image which I've edited, which you can use it in your gold texture brush. And along with that, I also made sure that I clicked on auto repeat and I set the grain scale to 1, or if you want the grain scale to be something else, you can set that as well. But make sure that the auto repeat is on, as this will give you seamless texture. I'm just gonna click on done. Now along with that, as we studied, there are two grain behaviors. There is moving as well as texturized, but the one that I'll be using is moving. Now as we studied, scale is something that will help you set the size of the texture. 34% is something that looked good for me, so I'm gonna leave it to 34. And I have turned on the zoom to maximum, as it just gives that nice feeling to the brush. I've set both depth and depth minimum to max. Again, we have discussed on what each of these properties are in our previous video. I'll also keep the offset jitter on, as I want that the difference between two textures in our stamp, I want that to be random, and that's why I leave the offset jitter to on. And remember this one, I've kept the blend mode to darken. Now I do realize that I've not made a video yet on all the blending modes and different differences between each blending mode, but I'm planning to make that video soon, so it'll be more clear for you guys. But for now, for this particular brush, I'm gonna leave it to darken. You can experiment with different blending modes when you are creating this particular brush. Now brightness and contrast again depends on your preference. I would suggest to set it to maximum so that the texture that is there inside your stamp is much more visible, and brightness to 14% over here. There's no much change in grain filtering, as it's by default set to improved filtering, and 3D grain behavior doesn't matter much, as it's not going to change much of the result. Now after you set all these values, this will be it for your primary brush grain attribute. Let's check what the settings for the shape should be. Now for shape, I chose a simple blotch shape from the source library that is already there, but you can check and choose any of the shape sources that are there. But the result of your strokes will depend on what kind of shape that you have chosen. For this particular one, what I would suggest is go with a simple blotch. If you can see, this is the one that I've used. I'm just gonna click on done and let's get on with the next set of properties that are there. I have set the scatter to maximum over here because if I reduce the scatter, it does still give me this particular effect, but with scatter set to maximum, I really like this texture. That's why I've set it to maximum. And I've not experimented much with count because what happens when you increase the count is that it will stamp multiple times in a stroke. That can ruin this particular gold foil structure. So I've not touched anything with the count or count jitter. Rest of all the properties are not set as they won't matter much. Now coming to rendering, I've set the rendering to intense, and I do know that we have not discussed about rendering attribute yet on the channel, but stay tuned for the videos to come by as I'll be discussing this in detail in the future videos. For now, just know that if you set it to intense blending, that will make paint come out as more vibrant. It will sort of give this similar effect as applying a thick paint on a canvas. So setting it to intense blending will make the colors more pop up. And then I have set the flow to max here because obviously you need all the paint that could come from your pencil. So I've set it to max. And then you have burnt edges. I've set this to multiply. Now the blend mode, this is something which is really important. You should always set it to add. Next attribute that you would have to look into is the Apple Pencil properties. I've set the pressure sensitivity to maximum, but this you can set based on your preference. And the next thing that I would like to discuss is about the stroke properties. Now I did set some spacing to my stamps as I didn't want the particles to be too cluttered. So I tried and tested and I thought 38 is somewhat like a decent spacing. I did turn on the jitter because that will give sort of that gritty effect to your brush. So I've set it to 19. Now if you want additional touches to your brush, for example if you want to set some taper at the beginning or the end, you can go ahead and modify it using the taper attribute. I have not set any taper for my brush as of now, so that is something which you can try and figure out which one suits you best. Now if you're into lettering or if you want to draw more stabilized stroke, then I would recommend setting some amount of streamline as I've set. Now these are all the properties that I've set for my primary brush. Coming to the secondary brush. Secondary brush is pretty simple. It doesn't have any texture but just the shape and few attributes around blending and rendering mode. The reason I've set the secondary brush at the first place is because when I was trying to create this particular texture with just one brush, the colors were not popping up much. Now if you can see, there are few particles over here that are sort of overexposed, which will give that nice gold glittery effect, while few of the particles are a little dark, which will help maintain a nice contrast between your texture. Now your secondary brush will sort of act like that additional filter when you draw something using your pencil. Now these are the values that I've set for spacing and jitter for my secondary brush, which is 30 and 20%. Coming to stabilization, I've not tweaked around this particular attribute much because whatever the stabilization that I've set, I've only set it for my primary brush, which is more than enough. And I also did not care to bother about taper. I've not set any taper for both of my primary or secondary brushes. Next key thing that you have to take care for the secondary brush is actually the shape. Now the reason I went for this particular shape is because if I was going for a lot rounder space, then it would not give this particular gritty effect. So hexagon is something which is much more angled, and if you play around with scatter with this particular shape, you will get a really nice gritty texture. Next, coming to the shape properties, I have set some scatter to it. I've set it to 149 because that worked really well. And I've also increased count. Now we do know that count is something that will help the shape to be stamped multiple times within stroke. So I did set count to the maximum value because I wanted the shapes to be overlapped on each other and give that nice texture. That is all that I modified in shape. Now coming to grain, I've left it as blank. I've not imported any source for the grain because I already have grain imported for my primary brush. Having an additional texture on the secondary brush will just make it too cluttered, which I do not want. So I've left the grain to be blank. And the values under grain behavior don't matter much because our grain is blank. So you need not worry much about it. You can turn them off. Now there is one thing that you have to take care for the secondary brush, which is the blend mode. Make sure you set the blend mode to multiply. Now coming to rendering, I've set it to light glaze and the blending to max. And coming to the pencil properties, I have turned on the pressure sensitivity for about 55% as I want a bit of pressure sensitivity to my brush. Now once you're done setting this, you have to take care of one more thing, which is how your both the brushes should lay on top of each other. So there's something called as combine mode, which will help you determine how your primary brush and secondary brush have to interact with each other when you draw a stroke. Now combine mode, I've set it to overlay, as this one worked really good for the result that I wanted to create. That was all about the actual points that you have to take care of while creating this particular brush. And coming to the miscellaneous factors like probably creating your signature or adding your name, you can go ahead and do that in about this brush, but this doesn't matter much and it will not contribute to the actual result of the brush. Now one more thing which I should have discussed is on how you combine two particular brushes. So for example, I have this particular brush here. What I'll do is I'll duplicate. Now all you have to do is just select any of the brush between these two and then swipe on the other brush very quickly. It will then give you an option to combine. That's how you combine two particular brushes. And once you combine, if you open the brushes, it will take you to that brush interface where you can set the properties which we just discussed. Your brush is ready now. Now I do want to showcase how this particular brush looks on watercolor brushes. Now I'm gonna take a different layer and will select the brush that I've created and take a golden color and we'll try to draw something over it. Yes, this is exactly what I wanted. It just gives that nice glittery golden foil effect. It looks really good on all type of darker colors. It also looks okay on white or lighter colors. This time I'll choose a lighter color, probably something like this. So this is a much lighter color. Let's see how our gold brush that we have created looks on this particular one. This is how it looks. This is really good for lettering, or if you want to add this particular streaks like golden streaks to any of your watercolor or acrylic or any type of drawing that you're going to create. Now while having the golden foil here and then clipping and then using different layer techniques does help create the golden texture, but having that embedded in the brush itself is much more viable option and it's just much more convenient. Now if you want to download this particular brush that I've created, then you can check the link in the description. It's totally free. You can just download and import it in your Procreate app. I will also include the image that I used for this gold foil. If you want to create your own brush, you can use that particular texture and go ahead and create your own brush. Now with that being said, if you found this video helpful, please consider subscribing to the channel. There will be more videos like this to come by in future. And while creating this particular brush by yourself, if you face some issue, please reach out to me. Leave a comment in the comment section so I can try resolving whatever error that you have. That will be all for this particular video. I will see you in the next coming videos. Until then, take care and bye bye.